Midsumner Publishing House presents The Fall of Twilight, written by Oberon Goodfellow, narrated by Oberon Goodfellow. Act 1, Wicked Arrivals, Chapter 1. I had been waiting for over an hour for my father to arrive. The summons for this meeting having arrived during the midnight hour the night prior hinted at the urgency. By now the sun was already well above the horizon as my fingers tapped impatiently on the velvet armchair that was placed in front of his ridiculously oversized mahogany desk. I lazily looked around the room for the 100th time. The size of the desk could easily be the size of a king bed. At least he got a royal woodworker to give it some extra character by carving in scenes of how he rose to his seat of power as the current sovereign of the City of Seasons. Although the panels do seem to change over time, the current 3 scenes portrayed the following. My father's crowning as sovereign in some sort of glade surrounded by all the courts on the foundation stone of this very city. The second showing him looking at a rising sun with a younger version of me at his side. And the third showing the city's prosperity and a united fae folk. My gaze focused on the third and squinted. It seemed from the last time I saw it there were a few more added shadow-like textures I hadn't noticed before. I gave a couple blinks, and they were gone. The breeze filtered through the glass doors behind his desk, altering my focus to the outside, bringing with it the smells of the farmer's market that led up to the palace ground. My stomach growled in response. I hadn't had a chance to eat breakfast since he wanted me in these chambers at dawn. I'm not surprised he left me in suspense. Always trying to prove who is in control. Joke's on him. These kinds of games tell me how insecure he is. I chuckled to myself and stopped when I could have sworn I heard a growl. I turn and lay eyes on the mounted head of a cougar, glaring as I stick out my tongue. The cougar is one of my father's hunting prizes from who knows when. Oh, stop. You know I'm right, Gunther, I retorted to the cougar. I don't know if Gunther is his real name, but I've never heard him complain about it. I named him Gunther when I was a child receiving yet another lecture from my father on the importance of... Honestly, I don't remember. I heard Gunther give a huff in response, and before I could say something, my father's office door swung open brusquely, followed by his own, over-the-top entrance. High King Julius Goodfellow, Lord of Beasts, and my father, swept into his office with an air of determined confidence, this time sporting an emerald-embroidered surcoat matched with simple brown trousers with gold buttons, and his favorite pair of knee-height leather boots. The embroidery pictured a variety of different summertime flowers from anthuriums to lilies. His golden red hair sporting only a few braids to keep the tousle to a minimum. Julius only stopped when he reached the back of his desk before pulling his chair and sitting with an uncharacteristic lack of grace. For the first time in a long while, I took in my father. While in his appearance he looked as pristine as ever, reading his face, I saw exhaustion, worry. And when I tilted my head in response, his silver eyes flashed and he straightened himself. I can count on my hand the number of times I've seen those emotions from him. The last time occurred on the eve of my marital bond to my husband, Titan, almost a decade ago. I opened my mouth in concern, but he instantly put a finger up as he grabbed a ledger from somewhere in his desk. My mouth closed as he opened the pages, then with a wave of his hand summoned a pair of spectacles. My father looked down at whatever was written, then looked back up at me, fully taking me in, and apparently he didn't like what he saw as his eyes narrowed. I honestly didn't take too much time or care getting dressed, thinking this was going to be a quick meeting. I was wearing a simple cream-colored tunic, with my favorite calf-high slacks and flat shoes, although I didn't forget my signature black glasses. With my own eye color changing to my mood, it was really the only advice I followed from my father. The glasses helped protect me from others knowing what I am feeling since I don't know how to mute them with silver, like my father always does. My father's eyes wandered to the top of my head. Assuming he was looking at how unkempt my hair was, I responded by jostling it a little more and smirked. He huffed in the same exact way Gunther did earlier. I rolled my eyes and waited. Now we are back to our typical exchanges of an almost chess-like game of body language versus actual language. But this time I knew I was going to lose. I had a morning brunch date planned with Titan and I was already running behind schedule and getting ready. I leaned forward in the chair, hands waving, then crossing in front of me. What are we doing here, Father? What is it you need? Julius's eyes seemed to shine. Took the words right out of my mouth, Oberon. What are we doing here? I blink and paused. You summoned me. How would I know? Julius's lips pursed and he shoved a ledger aside before saying, Here I was, hoping you would have a modicum of self-awareness for this meeting. But it seems once more I'm left having to clean up your messes. He picked up his glasses and glanced at the paper once more before taking the glasses off again. 400,692 gold worth of a mess, to be exact. I winced at the number. That bad, huh? Damn, I lost the bet. Titan is going to be so smug. And laughed, but was stopped when I heard my father growl. Oberon. I cut him off. Hey, how was I supposed to know the peanuts would do that much damage? They're so small. Julius blinked, not amused. I fear to ask. A peanut? I sit up straighter. Yeah, it's one of these new tiny vehicles. Uncle Puck brought it from the prime material plane. Father, they're so much fun. We just didn't realize they would be so light, and perhaps it wasn't the best idea to... I stopped when he held up a hand once more. I leaned back. I don't care to know what you thought was a good idea or not. What ended up happening was the destruction of multiple old-growth trees being destroyed. The lives of these trees total more than 10 millennia, Oberon. If you had taken the time to know your history of each of the quarters of Midsumner, or heck, even the people, you would maybe know a little better, or heck, have empathy. That got me. That word, empathy. I scowled. You're lecturing me on empathy? You can't even... Julius growled and slammed his hands on the desk. Be very careful, boy. I closed my mouth and sat back. Closed my eyes, trying to calm myself. I could feel now how my red eyes almost tried to sear a hole through my lids. We both took a minute before my father continued. I will pay this bill. I will actually be tripling the amount to the priest because those trees were priceless, and I will increase our annual donations. But that was it, Oberon. That was your last chance. This cannot keep happening. And... He sighed and sat back in the chair. Despite what you may believe, I will not live forever. You need to start caring. You need to start becoming the Fey Prince I know you're capable of. He paused once more before he signed the ledger, and with a wave of his hand, it disappeared. Starting today, well, tonight more specifically, you will be under advisement by Triska. You will work from her. Learn from her. He waited for me to respond, but as I sat in shock, he continued. Gone are your late nights. I had hoped in you getting married you would settle into your duties, but clearly you have proved me wrong. You belong to Triska. Your time belongs to Triska. She will regularly provide updates on your progress. The reality of what he stated finally hit me, and I tried to stand but found myself bound to the chair I sat in. I looked at him in horror. You're sending me to work in the morgue? Where true death waits? This is your idea of protecting me? Teaching me a lesson? My father nodded sternly and said, I should have sent you to her ages ago. I myself learned from her, but she only just returned to court at my behest. She needed time to settle her request. Now it's time for you to learn. His eyes flashed with a thought. I would hope that you would just say yes out of the goodness of your heart. But how about this? You go, you learn, you listen, you absorb, and when Triska tells me you are ready, we will finally have that talk about your mother. His bond let me go, and I stood at the words. You mean that? King Julius looked up at me, clearly seeing my desperation. I knew nothing about my mother, nothing about my origin. No one at court was physically able to discuss it, which I learned at an early age, or it clicked when I tried so many attempts and dealings to no avail. Finally, my father said, when I blossomed, it's the Fey equivalent of magical puberty, he would tell me. But that was over 4 decades ago, and I have still yet to blossom. I've wanted this information for so long. I kept my focus on him and waited. I do, my father said finally, and held out a hand for me to shake. Before my father could change his mind, I shook it. I pulled back quickly as we both felt a spark. I grinned, savoring the moment. Then, as if we hadn't just had the most important conversation in at least a decade, my father waved that same hand at me. You're dismissed. Give my regards to your prince. The doors to his office swung open, and I walked out happily. I dared to glance back as the doors closed, and I could have sworn I heard Gunther huff in a pleased way. Without second thought, I turned once more. I had news to share with my prince, indeed. This has been a sample of The Fall of Twilight by Oberon Goodfellow. Keep an eye on Islestagram and the Y in City for news of when the full first chapter will be released. Thank you for listening.